This video is about the history of Canada, from the first Indigenous inhabitants to the modern nation. I will explain how early discoveries by the Vikings and European explorers influenced the country's development, and how various conflicts and colonizations shaped today's Canada. Thousands of years ago, Indigenous peoples lived in Canada. They hunted, fished, and built villages, like the Inuit in the north. Each group had its own language and culture. Their traces can be found in ancient tools and art. These peoples lived long before the arrival of Europeans. Around the year 1000, Vikings from northern Europe landed in Canada. They built a small settlement in L'Anse aux Meadows, now Newfoundland. It was the first known contact between Europe and North America. The Vikings did not stay long. Their settlement was soon abandoned. In the 15th century, European explorers came to Canada. John Cabot, an Italian, sailed for England in 1497 and reached the east coast. He searched for a sea route to Asia, but found rich fishing grounds. His voyages drew Europe's attention to Canada. Other explorers like Jacques Cartier followed. From 1534, France began colonizing Canada. Jacques Cartier explored the St. Lawrence River and named the land Canada. In 1608, Samuel de Champlain founded Quebec, the first permanent settlement. The French traded with indigenous peoples, especially in furs. The area was called New France. The fur trade was very important in the 17th century. French traders worked with indigenous peoples, such as the Huron. Beaver pelts were highly sought after in Europe. The trade brought wealth, but also conflicts with other indigenous groups. The French built trading posts like Montreal. The British came to Canada in the 17th century. They founded settlements in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. In 1610, the Hudson's Bay Company was established to trade furs. The British and French often fought over land. Their rivalry shaped early Canadian history. Europeans brought diseases like smallpox that killed many indigenous people. There were also wars, for example, between the Iroquois and Huron. Some indigenous groups allied with the French or British. Land was often taken through treaties or violence. Many indigenous people lost their way of life. The 7 Years' War, from 1756 to 1763, was crucial for Canada. France and Britain fought for control over New France. In 1759, the British defeated the French at the Battle of the Plains of Abraham near Quebec. In 1763, France gave up New France in the Treaty of Paris. Canada became British. After 1763, the British ruled Canada. They called the territory the province of Quebec. Many French stayed, and the British allowed them to keep their language and religion. The Quebec Act of 1774 secured these rights, yet tensions between French and British remained. The American Revolution, from 1775 to 1783, affected Canada. Many Loyalists loyal to Britain fled from the USA to Canada. They settled in Nova Scotia and Ontario. Their arrival changed the population. Canada remained a British colony. In 1791, the province of Quebec was divided into Upper Canada, English, and Lower Canada, French. Each region had its own government. Upper Canada is today's Ontario. Lower Canada is Quebec. Many were unhappy with British control. There were tensions and protests. In 1812, war began between Britain and the USA. The USA wanted to conquer Canada, but the British and Canadians defended it. Indigenous peoples, led by Tecumseh, fought with the British. The war ended in 1814 without territorial changes. It strengthened Canadian unity. In 1837, uprisings occurred in Upper and Lower Canada. People wanted more democracy and less British control. In Lower Canada, French Canadians led the revolt. The British crushed the rebellions. Afterwards, a report recommended uniting the two Canadas. In 1840, Upper and Lower Canada were united into the province of Canada. The government was to become more democratic, but problems remained. French and English Canadians often clashed. The fur trade declined, and agriculture grew. Canada slowly developed further. In the 19th century, railways were built in Canada. They connected cities like Montreal and Toronto. Railways made trade and travel easier. They also attracted immigrants from Europe. The Canadian Pacific Railway later became a symbol of Canada. In 1867, Canada became its own country through the British North America Act. Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick formed the Dominion of Canada. It was not fully independent but had its own government. John A. Macdonald became the first Prime Minister. Canada continued to grow. After 1867, Canada expanded its territory. In 1870, it bought the huge area of the Hudson's Bay Company, the Northwest Territories. Manitoba became a province in 1870. Settlers moved west, often onto Indigenous land. This led to new conflicts. The government made treaties with Indigenous peoples to acquire land for settlers. These treaties, like the numbered treaties, promised land and rights to Indigenous peoples. Many treaties were not honored. Indigenous peoples were forced onto reserves. Their culture was suppressed. From the 1870s, the government forced Indigenous children into residential schools. These schools aimed to Europeanize them. Children were separated from their families and forbidden to speak their languages. Many suffered abuse. The schools left deep scars. The Métis, descendants of Indigenous and European people, lived in the West. In 1885, they led the Northwest Rebellion under Louis Riel. They wanted to protect their land rights. The government crushed the uprising, and Riel was executed. It showed tensions in the West. In 1896, the Klondike Gold Rush began in the Yukon. Thousands moved north to search for gold. The gold rush brought wealth, but also chaos. It made Canada known internationally. The government sent police to maintain order. At the end of the 19th century, many immigrants came to Canada. They came from Europe, especially Britain, Ireland, and Eastern Europe. Many settled in prairie provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan. Immigrants built farms and towns. Canada became more diverse. In World War I, from 1914 to 1918, Canada fought alongside Britain. Canadian soldiers were successful in battles like Vimy Ridge. The war made Canada proud, but many died. After the war, Canada gained more independence. It became a more autonomous member of the British Commonwealth. In the 19-teens, women fought for the right to vote. In 1918, women were allowed to vote in national elections. Nellie McClung was an important activist. Indigenous women received voting rights much later. It was a step toward equality. The Great Depression in the 1930s hit Canada hard. Many lost their jobs, and poverty spread. Farmers in the prairies suffered drought and dust storms. The government introduced social programs. It was a difficult time for everyone. In World War II, from 1939 to 1945, Canada supported the Allies. Canadian soldiers fought in Europe and the Pacific. At home, women built planes and weapons. After the war, Canada became a middle power. It helped found the United Nations. After 1945, Canada experienced an economic boom. Jobs increased, and new cities grew. Immigrants from Europe and Asia arrived in large numbers. Canada became more modern with cars and televisions. The quality of life improved for many. In the 1960s, nationalism grew in Quebec. Many French Canadians wanted more autonomy or even independence. The Quiet Revolution brought social changes. There were tensions with the English-speaking government. Referendums on independence in 1980 and 1995 failed. In 1971, Canada introduced a policy of multiculturalism. It promoted cultural diversity. Immigrants from Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean shaped the country. Canada became known as a land of diversity, but challenges like racism remained. Since the 1990s, Canada has worked on reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. The government apologized for residential schools. Efforts are underway to recognize Indigenous land and rights. But many problems, like poverty on reserves, persist. Reconciliation is a long process.